Good. AJ Mahara here. And is that thing on? Oh, it's on. Oh, my glass is on. You know, blind as a bat or something. And it's dark in here. It's like my bat cave. No, not really. Maybe. Who knows? If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, then select all, and you'll get every video, as the youngins like to say, that drops to this channel. Oh, feels weird for me to say that. This commenter left a comment on the video I did. Borderlines use you. They do not love or attach to you, which is just true. Even though so many of you don't want to know that. So, for the overall subject of this video, then, when I say they can't meet your needs, and they don't really love you, and they don't attach to you, then why does it feel so good and feel like they met all your needs, and like they were loving you so much, and like they were so attached to you in the beginning or for a while? What's up with that? Commenter says, but at the beginning, my needs did feel so met. Fantasy, right? It feels that way, and you believe it. And of course, it's all about feelings and emotions. And even if you're falling in love with someone, if it was a healthier situation, boundaries come down. When people, like each person starting to fall in love with somebody, your boundaries come down. It feels good. You want more of what's going on. Feels great. And of course, people at BPD are idealizing you. So yeah, it feels great in the beginning. And maybe that sort of pretty positive can last a while. But then split to devaluation is going to come, a major one. And can sometimes that just be a rupture episode, and then kind of it goes back to sort of okay, but not really as good as it was, but it feels pretty good. So yeah, you think it's all back to the way it was until you go through enough of those ruptures and those splits to devaluing you that you start going, wait a minute, what is all this? What's happening? I didn't do it. I didn't say, why are they so mad now? How come? Like they won't talk to me? What? They just what? You know, all the stuff they do. They break up. They come back. I said they'll say this. Oh, I didn't mean that. But like, they'll ghost you and then they'll come back like nothing happened. And for some reason, so many people, because it feels so good in the beginning, you're like, okay, well, you're back now. Good. Why? That's self-abandonment. At the beginning, says this commenter, my needs did feel so met. He was so attentive, so available, supportive, and seemingly generous. Yeah, because he's in idealization, male borderline or female borderline, they're projecting onto you. Good mom that they never had. And that's whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. Because it's an unconscious thing coming from the core of their emotional arrested development and all of their woundedness and loss of self. The split happened when he worried that he'd make me feel unwanted, but created a problem and accused me of being mistrustful and not honest. Yes, and this is what is known as things are going so well, right? And then all of a sudden, the split happens, as this commenter says, because he, her borderline person, I don't know if they're still together or exes, he started to worry that he would make the commenter feel unwanted and created a problem of being mistrustful and of not being honest. And what was happening with that? You see, that happens when the person with BPD, unknowingly to them, starts to experience fear of engulfment anxiety. Oh, it's a lot, but they're not aware of what that is. But a lot of feelings start turning around inside of them. And then what do they do with those feelings that they're not really aware of and they can't articulate? Consciously, they're not aware of it. Well, then they start to worry and say they're worried that they might make you feel unwanted because they're not so sure that you really want them at that point. So they're projecting it out. And then they create a problem. And then the accusations start. And in this case, person is being accused of being mistrustful. Well, because the person with BPD doesn't know how to trust themselves. So they're not trusting themselves. How can they trust you? And so then they do this role reversal with that. It's coming from them and they plant it on you. So he's projecting out this onto you. It's not about you, it's how he's feeling and can't articulate and doesn't probably even have awareness of those feelings. And they can't be consistently honest, so he's projecting that out as well. Commenter says, when he would say he's completely fine with me going to a party, classic, yes. So he could be completely fine with the commenter going to a party and then afterwards totally flip out. Yes, because he's not fine at all, doesn't probably understand that inside, okay? But then that's abandonment fear. Oh, yeah, sure, go to the party, have a good time, empty words. Meanwhile, inside, all this emotion is building. They don't understand why. So they say what they think you want to hear. And then they live in the turmoil of wondering if you're ever coming back. Because, like a young child, it's like mom went out, or dad, mom went out. Is she coming back? What's going to happen to me? And they'll go through this whole world of torture inside that's all about abandonment. And maybe it's the unconscious repetition compulsion experiencing of when they might well have been emotionally and or actually abandoned in childhood to some degree or other. So they're going through all that the whole time you're at the party, having a good time, thinking, hey, my partner's cool. I'm at this party. I'm seeing people. This is great. Well, no, they're suffering. They're going through all what they're going. It's an explanation, not an excuse, right? They're going through a ton internally, and it is they get. I think that's my dog there, Grace, and they get all kinds of. Is that you, Grace? Where are you, Grace? They get. Oh, there she is. They get all kinds of like insecure, very fearful, triggered, often to age regression. So more like, hey, Grace, more like a young child. Say hi, Grace. More like a young child. So they're going through hell while you're at the party or wherever you are, taking your trip, going to work, etc. And then you come back, they have all these feelings they don't know how to contain, they don't know what to do with, they don't understand what they are, and there's no excuse for this, but then they're going to take it all out on you and they flip out. And whatever they're going to say, how could you leave me? How could you do this? Why'd you do it? Whatever it is. And that's going to happen almost every time you go anywhere for a lot of people with BPD. And so then the commenter says, is it normal for BPD people to also be people pleasers and dishonest to themselves and others? Well, people with BPD absolutely have severe codependency. So there are people with codependency, different degrees of that, who end up in relationships with people with BPD. But yes, people with BPD, aside from the push-pull of approach avoidance, like, oh, right now I'm feeling abandonment fear, so I'm going to pull you in more. Or like, how dare you go to that party, flip it out when you come home. And then to the everything's fine, everything's too good, actually. They don't know how to tolerate that either. The engulfment anxiety builds, the engulfment fear, and they got to push you away again. Split to devaluation. It's a roller coaster. It's going to be pulled in, pushed out. You're going to be pulled in, pushed out. And the commenter just asks simply, are they also people pleasers? Well, yeah, they're severe codependents. And when they're not people pleasing, no, they're triggered, they're age regressed, they're yelling, they're screaming at you, they're giving you the silent treatment, they're devaluing you, they're calling you all kinds of names, they're saying you shouldn't have gone to the party, how dare, they're guilting the living you know out of you. And then, yeah, comes the people pleaser back. And why does that ever matter to anybody anymore? You know, to be honest. And dishonest to themselves and others. Well, yeah, they don't. And there's a broken heart emoji at the bottom of the comment. I feel for you, commenter, but you need to know that this is not going to work. You need to know that you can't save it, can't rescue, can't fix, can't change him, and that you need to get into some therapy to help you to heal the codependency, to initiate the breakup if he doesn't ghost or discard you. This is just not a place to be. It's not healthy. It's going to continue to damage and hurt and wound you, and you're going to start feeling, as do men with women with BPD. So I'm not just saying this because it's a woman with a male with BPD. You're going to start feeling like their parent, like their mommy. And what's in it for you? Except that maybe you're used to people pleasing others yourself in codependency and trying to walk on the eggshells, and you think that that's somehow going to make a change and make the relationship work and make it better. No, it's not. It's never going to do that. These people have to go to therapy and years of it. And DBT therapy is not a recovery modality. So if they go and do that for 6 months, 3 days, 2 weeks, 6 months, a year, they're only just managing symptoms and they still don't know who they are. And they're still going to have the major defense mechanism of borderline personality disorder, which is splitting, which is the all or nothing black and white thinking, which is the going from the approach avoidance struggle, which is like, okay, so now I want to be close to you. Uh-oh, now we're too close. Now I got to get away from you. Only they don't know this. The push-pull, the I hate you, don't you dare leave me because I'll hate you a little bit less soon or something, but they're not always emotionally aware of this at all. And they can't be honest with themselves if they're untreated and they have BPD because they don't have a self. They don't even have an actual self, a known self, a container of self to know what's honest or not. People with borderline personality disorder, usually it's a very adverse childhood background, and they're coming from emotional arrested development, so they really didn't grow emotionally beyond the age of 2 or 3. Now they grow up physically, they get a year older, they are smart, most of them, intelligent. They use the intellect to then try to fill in some gaps and that kind of thing, but it doesn't work. What they do mostly with their intellect most of the time, between the pull and the push and the pull and the push and the on and off and the ghosting, discarding, roller coaster of, everything. And, oh, yeah, sure, go to the party, have a good time, babe. You come home. How the hell could you leave me? What were you doing? What about me? What about me? What about me? Always the borderline is the victim, because they're reliving always when they were a victim. Understandable, but impossible to relate to. Impossible to have a healthy, consistent relationship of any kind with. Yes, they are unable to be honest with themselves because they don't have awareness. And in borderline personality disorder, well-studied aspect of it is that there's awareness impairment simply because people have the arrested emotional development by or before the age of 2 that is the cornerstone foundation of the woundedness at the core of borderline personality disorder. No matter how much you're going to hear other people describe it other ways, talk about maybe it happens when they're 18, maybe it happens when they're 30. Oh, maybe they're just going to age out. Maybe they're just going to hit remission somehow. Maybe they'll have enough awareness, as I did a video about recently. Maybe they'll have enough awareness to think about it. Just really think about it. And then no, because all the awareness in the world, all the intellectual kind of trying to understand, it can't touch the arrested emotional development and the person lacking self. That has to be addressed in therapy. There's no do-it-yourself recovery from borderline personality disorder. If you felt like all your needs were being met in the beginning, and that felt great, but now what you have to come to develop your awareness about more is that after the idealization phase is over and that major split to devaluation where they don't re-idealize you again, even if it goes back to being kind of okay sometimes, it's always going to be pull, because I need you, I'm feeling abandoned, I want my mommy. And then push, oh, you're too close, I don't know what's going on, you're trying to control me, what's the matter with you? Because they can only relate to you from the young childlike place where they lost themselves, and you become the object of their parent representation, as I'm always talking about. So just because it feels really good in the beginning, to excellent, to amazing, to magical, to physical relations and everything, it's a fantasy bond. Because you never met the real him or her. They don't know who they are. And so who are you loving? And when it felt good, great, but you can't hang in for the times when it's going to feel good and then ride the upside down roller coaster of when they're yelling and screaming at you or ghosting you or discarding you or giving you the silent treatment only to maybe come back to do it all over again. That's a codependent self-abandonment. It's really important that people know that how it feels in the beginning. Yes, you really felt that way, but it was magical in a way, right? It was too good to be true, the siren song and all I've talked about. And now you have to realize, you have to look back at what was that really? Because it felt great, but where'd it go? It's not consistent. It's not lasting. That person, whoever you thought he or she was, isn't who they are. They don't know who they are. This is more the reality about them than anything that they, quote, made you feel, unquote, in the beginning, because they don't make you feel anything. People meet these people in the idealization phase. You don't know about BPD, probably most people never heard of it before. Not everybody, but most people. You just find this great woman, this great man, whatever, and it's great until all of a sudden, what's going on here? What? Wait. What did I do? I just went to a party. What's going on here? And then, you try to excuse it multiple times, maybe millions of times, but it never stops happening. Then you're accruing damage. And guess what? It's never about you. They blame you for everything. They guilt you for everything, but it's never about you. It's always about them and what you did or you didn't do. Oh, you did too much of this. I can't say, you didn't do that. Well, you never said this. You didn't even notice when I came home. Oh, you looked at your watch. See, you don't really love me. Oh, you went to that party. Well, how many? So in the case of the woman that went to the party with the borderline male partner, well, how many of those guys there were you sleeping around with? How many? You must have cheated on me, right? It's just nonsensical. It's a little child, a little really wounded child with no self, lost in an adult body with maybe an adult IQ, but the EQ, emotional intelligence, of a 2 or 3-year-old. How's that going to work in a relationship? They have no object constancy, no object permanence, no consistent, congruent self to relate to you from. Everything's going to get externalized out that they feel because they don't know why they're feeling it. It's going to all be your fault. They're going to be making excuses. They're going to be blaming you. And why should you continue to go around those cycles? Because it felt so great in the beginning. That's where a lot of people are stuck. But what about when it isn't feeling so great right now? Or it doesn't feel very great very much of the time? Or maybe it's just not great at all anymore. To the point where it's really hardly ever, or maybe not ever positive, but you're still in this fantasy bond of magical thinking that, well, maybe they're going to, one day appear to be that person. And as I said in another video recently, I've had a lot of clients say, well, so who was he or she then? Was he or she really the person that made me feel so great in the beginning, who was they're just mirroring you? It's not even it's idealization of you as object, other, parent, representation. It's not even about you, what you do, what you don't do. But they make you feel so good. They're not aware of this consciously, usually. It's a survival tactic of defensive manipulation, but it's not like they go, I'm going to get this person and I'm going to tell them all this and I'm going to make them feel that, and then they'll just have to figure out what the hell happens after that because I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know why stuff happens and it's not my fault anyways, they'll think. And they just externalize all that out consistently. That's what you can count on. So I've had clients asking me, well, so was the real person the borderline, the he or the she, that made me feel so great in the beginning? Or was it more the real person that yelled and screamed at me or gave me the silent treatment or ghosted me a bunch of times, accused me of all kinds of things, said I'm this and that and the other thing when it's just not true? Is that the real person then? And like I said in a recent video, no, it's neither, because there's nobody home. And when I say nobody home, I don't mean any disrespect to people with borderline personality disorder. There are studies on this that look at that loss of self, that fragmenting off child ego state in emotional arrested development by or before the age of 2, described by Melanie Klein in Object Relations as abandonment trauma causes the psychological death of the otherwise burgeoning authentic self. End quote. What does that mean? Who they were on the trajectory to become had they been parented properly and not experienced a lot of the things that people with BPD do or have cluster B parents, which a lot of them do, or a mother or whatever. Then the thing is, there's this emotional arrested development, and it happens sometimes in infancy. It happens in toddlerhood. It happens before or by the age of 2. And that's done already. And then They may seem like they're doing semi-okay or okay, like from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up until they start to get around the hormonal changes of adolescence, and then it all kind of blows, or if they're quite borderline, it's manifested differently. But there's no self there, literally. You need to think about what that literally means. People with codependency often have an unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship to self. You have somewhat of a lost self in your own woundedness that created the defense to trauma of, or various adverse experience, different degrees of that in your childhood, why you have codependency, which is formidable and very easy to describe in depth. Check out my Codependency Surviving Cluster B Relationships podcast, which I will really have more episodes coming in soon. It's on this channel, but you're going to need to find codependency.ca when I get that thing working to find the podcast website for that podcast as well, because podcasts aren't coming up to this channel very often, if at all. So you're going to want to be following my podcast elsewhere, wherever you get podcasts and such. So the thing is that people with codependency already have something going on inside a self that makes it so you're in a more than you might realize voraciously emotionally hungry place for being seen and heard. And the borderline shows up mirroring and really experiencing you as object, other, good parent representation. It's not really about you. It's like a crossing. It's like a missing each other totally, but it doesn't feel like that. And so then when that's happening, you're enamored. You're in. You're for all kinds of reasons, notwithstanding only physical relations that so many people talk about. But you're in because you are feeling great. And you believe they're making you feel great. And you believe that they are just so into you. When even in idealization, they are not seeing you. They are not seeing who you really are. And so people with codependency have lost themselves to a degree, but not to the completeness of the fragmentation off of the child ego state that people with BPD suffer before or by the age of 2. So for all the biology speak on BPD, it's not even relevant. If it's biological, we know that trauma affects the brain, whether the chicken came before the egg. People aren't born with BPD. They can be born with an extra sensitive temperament. Neuroscience explains that. And then they meet with an invalidating environment, or the perception of an invalidating environment, and or a whole lot more. And this part of self just psychologically dies. Lost, gone, arrested, forget it. So you're trying to have a relationship, if you're with a borderline and you're still trying to do this and make it work and save them and rescue them and fix them and put up with all this stuff, you're trying to reparent somebody that wasn't parented properly. You're trying to reparent somebody who doesn't know who they are. And is that what you imagined when you wanted to grow up and fall in love with someone and have a family? And if you have kids with a borderline, is that what you imagined, that you'd have another child on top of the count of how many children you have? People with codependency, you have got to get on the page of why this won't work. Whatever your first hint or clue is, whatever the thing that's hurt you the most so far, take that to therapy and get on it. Because a lot of people can't can't do the breakups, can't accept the breakup, gonna want the ex back, can't live with him, can't live without him, etc. Because you need to go to therapy to figure out how you got there in the first place, to be able to undo that, to be able to heal from the relationship, the breakup, the ghosting, the discard, whatever happened, to stop being in a pattern of just waiting for them to someday come back and be wonderful again. It's a fantasy bond. And they never really were who you thought they were. And when they made you feel so wonderful, you extra needed that because it pumped up self-esteem and self-worth and stuff that people with codependency need to get into therapy to really experience internally and not need from an external source. These relationships don't work out. And there's no excuse for treating people the way that people with BPD do. This push-pull, push-pull, push-pull. You're worth so much more than that. And because they made you feel great in the beginning, hear me what I said here. Pay attention. Rewind it. Listen to it over and over. They weren't even seeing you while you were feeling so great. They weren't super into you the way that you think. They were experiencing you, except for the physical relations part, it's a little different. They were experiencing you as object other good parent never had in many cases. And so, or very rarely ever had, or how you felt in the beginning now becomes your greatest challenge to starting to get into therapy. I'm out here to work with you. If I resonate with you, to start doing this healing journey that feels impossible, but it's not impossible. And just like you got into this and now you're hurting and trying to figure out what's going on, it doesn't make any sense, and it's an impossibility of relationship. It's not going to work out. You're going to continue to hurt more and more and more, but you're stuck in it because of how wonderful it made you feel. And that seems to still hold more power and cred with you than how bad you're feeling most of the time. Think about it. Take care.